Michael, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Well, it's the Michael Squad live presenting to you. I want to thank everyone so much for attending our session today, focusing on management agreements. Management agreements really have seen increased traction over the past couple of years as owners are looking for forward-thinking ways to partner with their landlords. We have brought on one of the leaders in management agreements in the industry today. And so I'm really excited to dive into some questions with Michael. Let me start by giving a brief introduction to Michael, and then we can jump into it. As an experienced vice president with a demonstrated history of working in the real estate industry, Michael comes to Flex with over 25 plus years of experience in commercial real estate and has worked as an operator as well. Today, he's an advisor for both landlords and operators in the Flex market, bringing parties together to form partnerships and incorporate Flex in office buildings. He also teaches a course with Jamie Rousseau on creative partnerships, and Jamie mentioned that earlier during a keynote. He's done many podcasts, recently did one on everything co-working, and he's always excited to share his knowledge to others about the value of Flex and how to incorporate Flex into every office portfolio. So quite the expert on management agreements. Michael, so glad to have you today.
Great. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks to OfficeRnD on putting this on, and it's great bringing all these people together. I greatly appreciate it. So let's jump into it.
Absolutely. Well, great. Before we get started, just to give you guys a brief introduction on myself, my name is Michael. I'm the product marketing manager at OfficeRnD. Prior to working at OfficeRnD, I actually co-founded a workspace in Atlanta. So I have experience as an operator as well. And so, just to give some brief introductions for us. And with that, we can jump right into the questions on making the right choice, management or lease agreement. So Mike, let's dive right into it. For those that don't know, can you give us a high level overview of management agreements? The why,
Sure.
the how, the when, it makes sense.
Sure. So really briefly, the pandemic hasn't really, it didn't just bring on the partnership arrangements. What the pandemic did was really just expose some of the exposures in what we call the rent arbitrage game. So let's step back to 2017 to 2019. We probably saw more activity in Flex operators from WeWork, from Industrious, from Convene, and all the smaller operators were signing leases. And there was a big discussion, obviously, back in 2019 about, well, that game has not been tested yet. And the game it's all about operators like WeWork sign a long-term lease, 10 years with options. What they then have to do is then they take that space, create that experience, and then they're selling memberships to the various occupiers in that space. So, and they're doing it on a small term basis. So basically what's happening is the operator has to satisfy the legal and financial obligations of a lease, plus the operating expenses for their own business, and then there has to be money left over for profit, and that's the arbitrage game. When the pandemic hit, what we saw was members ran for cover, they left their spaces, and all of a sudden it left operators holding the bag because they still had to fulfill their obligations. And so we saw a lot of defaults, and it not only tested the operators, but it tested how the business model works. So the one thing that everyone needs to know is management agreements were in place prior to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But because this business model was never tested, we hadn't had a recession yet. Everyone seems to remember when WeWork started back in 08, 09, they were a much smaller space, and then they grew. And so, what's happening now is this acceleration, and the key component to this acceleration of the Flex and the management agreements is for the first time, landlords get to benefit from they get to participate in the upside of the business. And this is huge. This is huge because now if we can actually prove as operators that we can outperform the market, meaning we can generate income that exceeds market rents, then all of a sudden we have a game to play with the landlord, and it provides for the foundation for the creative partnerships.
No, that makes a tremendous amount of sense, and I think let's step back a little bit in regards to that. Really just speaking about, you're talking about landlords and not, and then the operators. Kind of, can you give me a rundown of the traditional landlord that might be interested in this management agreement?
Sure.
Versus a traditional operator that would be a good fit to jump into a management agreement for their next location, just so people understand kind of what state their space needs to be in, and
Yep.
landlords understand vice versa.
Yep. So what's really interesting, and through this experiment of the pandemic, we've learned employees, they don't want to go back to that old office space. Okay. So they want flexibility, and flexibility is key. But, in order for a landlord to consider this flex component, it's new. So we have to understand, what's the landlord after? The landlord is after value creation, and values created in the past on long-term stable rents. And a 10-year lease does that.
Mm-hmm.
But a management agreement doesn't. However, we can go to other sectors, like the hotel sector, like the apartment sector. Well, they use management agreements on a daily basis. Like, that's how that business model works. But for the office sector, this is new. And so when you look at a landlord, if he's got vacancy, if he's got 30%, 40% vacancy, what does he have to do to fill that space up? He can sit there and work with his brokers to fill that space up, or better yet, why not create the flexibility that companies want to hear? Jamie showed us early on that there's so many companies that want this flex, from big four accounting firms to the Goldman Sachs of the world. They want this flex in it. They want the ability to allow their workers to work remotely, and going to a flex space is working remotely. So all of a sudden, we now have, we've expedited this process. We now seen the flaws in the business model. And all of a sudden, there's landlords that are saying, you know what? I want to offer that. How do I do it? Some landlords, like Tishman Speyer, they went on a 3-year journey to figure it out so they can put it in their portfolio. And they created Studio. Hines brought on an outside group as Industrious and did their first 2 deals with Industrious. And now I believe they've separated and they're doing it on their own. Mm-hmm. So why do landlords do this? They do this, again, landlords speak in the language of money, of capital, of value creation. Yep. So as an operator, you have to think, this is what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing value, and I can show you, oh, by the way, you're going to do better with me than you are with a traditional lease. And literally that's the key. Even in New York City, SL Green, RXR, Silverstein, they've all created their own flex operation. Yep. Some landlords, as we know, they will team up with operators, no different than what Granite Properties did in Texas with Common Desk.
Or CBRE with like Industrious recently.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's all about the value creation and how we're going to get there to satisfy the landlord. And not only the landlord, you have to understand there's a lot of stakeholders here. There's stakeholders from investors, from lenders, and their underwriters. And, it's the trickle down effect with capitalism, but it's really about the value creation and what Flex Office brings to the table.
And speaking of value creation, we spoke about this a little bit in our discussion before the meeting. But yeah, I mean, big news. WeWork going public today.
Yep.
Definitely, obviously valued very different than they were a couple of years back. But I'm interested to hear your take on how they have affected the industry in terms of management agreements. Obviously 3 to 4 years ago, and their highest valuation, they were signing more traditional leases everywhere. And I don't think they're doing that quite as much anymore, especially kind of given the circumstances today. So, yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
I will say this because there's a lot of mixed reviews on WeWork, but what they've done is they went large, they went bold, they provided an option to OfficeSpace. Basically what they did, they took away the boring and mundane, and they created the experience.
Yeah.
When I think of OfficeSpace, so just step back for a minute. So I came from a developer landlord perspective. So I know what value creation is. When I look at WeWork and I look at what they've done to the office space, they've done something what went on in the retail sector. It's about the experience. The retail world was about the experience of the shopper. Well, guess what? We're now talking about the experience of the worker, and the workers and the employees and the staffs worldwide they've now spoken up, and they want a better experience, and they don't want that experience about going into an office, closing a door, and not coming out for 8 hours. They want to be able to collaborate. And so, what WeWork has done is, putting aside their financial challenges, think about their concept and think about what they've been able to do. They've made that experience fun.
Yeah.
They've made it productive. They've created collaborative events from networking. They've brought worldwide attention to this concept. And while I started out with an operator on a much smaller scale, it's easy to understand by going big and making no small plans and what it can do. And so, here we are 2 years after their failed attempt of going public on an IPO. They still make it public. So they've survived and they've weathered a huge storm, and they're still out there, and there's still companies that are engaging them. And look, their numbers have been significantly greater. They've gone through now the last 5 months of increased revenues because of the strong demand in Flex.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, because we can all now ride this tidal wave, because the demand for Flex has really it's taken off.
Yeah, I mean, as these hybrid companies are returning to the workplace, they're dropping their traditional leases and figuring out how to get back in the office quicker and more efficiently and technologically than ever before. So that's a very interesting take on WeWork. Crazy that they are going public today or this week. Continuing on to the management agreement discussion, for operators that are considering management agreements, after all of this discussion, how do they establish true value for the building and for the landlord, so that they're a lasting fixture in that building and they're not, a short-term thing?
It's interesting. At the end of the day, there's so many different elements that go into creating a successful work experience. As a Flex operator, you're wearing so many different hats. Everyone always asks me the question, what makes a good Flex operation versus a not so good one?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth being told, it's not necessarily the furniture, but at the end of the day, it's the people. It's all about the people, because, we talk about that sense of community and the collaboration, and we throw around all these fancy words, but it's really about being together and being face to face. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a lot of different small tenants in an office building, imagine if we took down those barrier walls, that separation between them, and put them all together. You've now created a flex office experience. And that's really what we're doing. It simplifies the office management experience for landlords. It reduces that cost going in. And when we think about what is needed, it's people, and then you have to figure out how to monetize the space.
Yep.
And that's the key. The WeWorks of the world and the larger companies always went after the enterprise groups, the large companies. But the backbone still today, it's the smaller operators, because they're going after the solo entrepreneurs, the smaller media companies, the consultants, and all of a sudden you get different companies in this one space, and before you know it, they're working together. And it's the magic of selling office space, and whether it's private offices or whether it's open desk seating, whether it's dedicated desks, conference rooms. There's so much excitement, and it's about the operator figuring out how to monetize that space and charge people a rate that they don't feel bad about paying. And the difference, if you look at a traditional lease versus flex is you're charging based on your net usage of that space. Like the backbone of flex, if you speak to a lot of different operators, they'll tell you it's the private office.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a private office, more so today than ever
Especially
before.
right now. Yeah.
Pandemic, and a lot of it also has to do, is it urban? Is it suburban? I mean, there's so many different components. You can't really compare to, it's interesting. I've toured hundreds of locations. No two look the same, and it's the same thing about people, about the niche. And if you learn how to monetize the space, and you can bring something to the table to the landlord, you can sit down and have that discussion about the creative partnership. Mike, let me ask you a question. Can you share the numbers?
The pro forma, unfortunately, I'm not able to share my screen. So we're just going to have to talk about them, and we can have these resources available to everyone afterwards as well.
Okay.
But yeah, unfortunately, I can't share them right now. But yeah, I mean, that does lead into the next question about, tell us a little bit about how these operators are structuring their financials and pro forma when working with the landlords. And I'm sorry, guys, you'll have to use your imagination for this, but I think Mike will paint a good picture here.
Yeah. And anybody can, reach out to me. We actually have pro formas to share, but I'll tell you, at the end of the day, for landlords to get interested, it's about showing a premium. And when I say a premium, I'm talking about 20 to 25% premium over market rents. So the example that I was going to show today was it's in a suburban market, about $25 a square foot in rents. We were able to design a space with collaborative space, private offices, open desk seatings, the cafe areas, the large conference rooms, and really promote that social element in the business world. And we were able to generate, by the third year, we're getting $37 NOI coming to the bottom line after we paid the operating expenses, some for the business and some for the occupancy for the building, including real estate taxes and some we got a nice premium. We got a premium that actually exceeded the 20 to 25%. And when you can do that, then all of a sudden what happens is you have this waterfall of revenue. And, some landlords, um, all they want is get me to that $25 rent number.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of a sudden I have 10 to $12. I need to share that. I need to incentivize my operator to exceed all expectations. And so that revenue share model allows the landlord to make more money and allows the operator to be the beneficiary of their hard work and exceeding all expectations. And that's really what it's about. And, one thing we haven't covered yet, Mike, is, you know, why would a landlord do a management agreement? Well, you know, we've solved the first issue about revenue creation and value creation, and more money goes into their pocket. But there's other elements that I believe are even more important, especially in establishing the relationship. It's transparency.
Yep.
And as a manager, you basically report to the landlord, whether it's a hotel building, whether it's an apartment building. You do the same thing now in office. And
how quick question, how are you seeing, these companies share weekly reports or monthly reports? Is it just mainly revenue reporting?
So typically what we will do when we're advising a landlord and an operator, we actually act as an intermediary. And we act as an intermediary because we're not necessarily representing one or the other. When you do a traditional lease, it's an arm's length transaction. So there's always this game. It's the game of leverage when you're doing a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing a management agreement, you take those walls down, you take the facade down, and now you're sharing. Now it's a transparency, and all of a sudden, you're now opening your books. You're sharing bank accounts. You're doing the banking. You're basically doing the leasing. You're doing the management, and you're operating that space. Mm-hmm. And you are taking care of all aspects of the business for the landlord. And then at the same time, you're sending them variance reports. You've created a budget. If you exceed that budget, you obviously get rewarded. If you don't exceed it, then there's a challenge. Then we have a discussion. During a pandemic, during the Delta variant, we saw early May of this year, things were coming back. People were going into the office. They wanted to collaborate again and get some teams together.
Yep.
And then we saw a little blip in July and August and September. And that was because of the variant. Now we're seeing things pick up again. That doesn't mean we won't have another variant or we won't have to do some things. But what I love the best about what's happening now is landlords have had the time to think about this. They've increased filtration systems, flow,
made those changes.
HVA flow. It's safer. It's healthier. People are more accustomed to wearing masks. You can go into your private office and you can take your mask off and you're somewhat protected. And plus there's so many flex operators that are doing events today, and people are coming out and people want to get together and they want to do face-to-face business together. And the flexibility means you don't have to go in every day. The other thing that has been in discussion is utilization rates. This is what Flex does. Flex can satisfy teams of 10 to 20 or 50, and you can rotate people in, so then your utilization rate typically is significantly higher. We've seen this from every operator that's reporting today. Even WeWork's reporting it. Industrious is reporting it. I mean, it's great to watch, because in the traditional office space, a lot of times these offices sit vacant. So for the first time, we're now able to see companies reduce their footprint, and many companies throughout the world are reducing their footprint, and they're going flex, and they're saving money without having to get rid of people.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the best thing, because people still make a company culture, and the culture is really, really important.
Yeah, they're just spending a lot less on rent.
Yep.
So we had a question in the audience from Shane that's relevant to what you were just talking about. Shane wrote, I'm still confused on the partnership with the landlord regarding a management agreement. Are you saying we can do a joint venture with them and share profits? Can you just explain that setup a little bit so these people that are exploring management agreements, have an understanding?
So, if it's a management agreement, the operator is nothing more than the conduit to the business, and they're generating revenue. There's also expenses for the community manager, for office supplies, all that stuff. Every month there's revenue that is being generated. In a typical management deal, no different than, again, a hotel or an apartment, that manager sends that monthly check to the landlord. In the flex world, we send variance reports. We send all kinds of reports on lead generation. How are you getting your leads? What's happening? Are we exceeding our expectations? And so, yes, it's all about sharing profits. It's revenue sharing. But at the same time, if you're an operator and you're in a management deal, you don't have the financial stress of having to fulfill that lease obligation,
which is the big thing. The big one for most people.
And then landlords will ask you, "What's your skin in the game?" Well, that's a give and take, and that has to do with, are you a big group with multiple locations? And a great success story, or are you an independent? And every situation is different, because landlords are different. There's the institutional guys, there's the family-run companies, there's the private investment groups. Everyone's got a different objective, but for a management deal or a creative partnership deal, it ends up being about size, scale, the magnitude. You're obviously going to you're going to achieve an economies of scale with the 20 to 40,000 square foot space, as compared to a space that is only 5 to 10,000 square feet. And, a lot of people don't remember this, but the first space that Adam Newman did prior to forming WeWork was only 5,000 square feet.
Yeah. It's called Green Desk or something like that.
You learn rather quickly what scale does, and what the economies of scale does, and how you get to that level. There's a trial and error period, but at the same time, it allows you to grow and satisfy not only your obligations, but you create enough of the revenue share that everyone gets rewarded. The landlord gets rewarded, and you, the operator, gets rewarded as well.
Your brand. Yeah, no, I completely agree with it. And it really starts to bring to light the kind of the benefits of the management agreements. Shane had another good question, I think, that relates to this. But tell us more about, he says, is a 50-50 split on sharing profits or revenue? I know a lot of it has to do with the scale of the operator and the landlord. But can you go into more details about how operators can be successful whenever they're negotiating or building this partnership agreement to get those splits that are looking good for them?
So what we do a lot, we will run a lot of sensitivity analysis. We'll look at what we're charging. How are we, what's our pricing schedule? How does that compare to the competition? What's our niche? I have to tell you, I have been pleasantly surprised and overwhelmed about the creativity and the entrepreneurship with so many locally run flex spaces. I mean, from social memberships to virtual mail, to startup community. It's just it's it's so rewarding, and the entrepreneurship, ironically, is at the lower level. It's with the independent operators. It's not necessarily with the larger groups. And I say this with all honesty and a straight face. Sometimes these larger groups are so vertically structured, they take away the entrepreneurship. So I'm all for the entrepreneurship, because Flex Office, what it's done for so many operators is there's not one way of getting revenue. Under a traditional lease, the landlord gets the revenue one way,
Yep.
and that's through the lease payment.
Yep. That's a
And we
great
saw
point.
what happened with that in the pandemic. You don't have a lease payment, like you're done.
Yeah.
You're in default. But all of a sudden now, the flex operators, we get we have open desks, we have dedicated desks, we have conference facilities, we have social events, we have private offices. There, virtual mail. There's so many different ways to do this. And so, depending on where you're located and what your demographic profile is of your user, you can bring in different elements to raise that awareness of Flex, but also benefit from monetizing the business even further.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, it's amazing. Just over the past 2 years, the products that have come to the forefront.
It's great.
I always love. Jamie talks about them, but the micro offices. Those are my favorite. There's a couple in the co-working space I'm in now, and yeah, it's such an interesting product that has just exploded over the past 2 years. And when I say micro office, I'm talking about a 150, 200 foot, what we used to call a closet, but they have cool glass doors, and people can set up their whole computer and everything they need in there to come in and work a day or two a week. So yeah, it's that entrepreneurship that you've seen coming out of some of the local spaces that has made a huge impact in these new products.
I will share with you in the audience the to be able to tour different operations and sit down and speak with different flex operators. Everyone has a different perspective, a different niche. Some go large, some go bold. For some, it's about the design, it's about the materials, the color. There's groups like Convene who have focused on food, and their platform, and we love that. There's just so much. There's groups like Craftwork who did the whole coffee thing. I mean, it's great. It's another element where we can bring things in from the outside and help them. And it's it not only is it local, but as you can grow and I heard in the last session about Cohatch in Ohio. They're learning that everyone loves that vibe, and everyone knows the vibe when you walk in. It's inviting. You want to be there. Like, you got to find a way to be there. So today's Flex, we're not only satisfying, different companies, we're satisfying ourselves. We have to learn better ways. Look, I mean, you guys deserve it. You guys got to, not only did you get a Series A funding, but within this past week, we saw two different mergers on the software side. The technology side of Flex is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're only in the second inning. I think it's evolving.
The pandemic accelerated. Accelerated some of this consolidation and things I think we'll see. But just like it created new products, it's creating a new demand for this tech.
And every landlord that has Flex, they will tell you one of the reasons why they're doing this. They truly feel that Flex will lead the way to help streamline and bring operating costs of the building down, because every landlord will tell you today these costs are skyrocketing. These costs of operating spaces, from real estate taxes going up, insurance going up, utilities, trash, janitorial. I mean, everything is going up. We have to find ways to control these costs better, and technology through some apps, can streamline this process, and we're already doing it in the flex world.
Yeah.
So why can't we take that same model and apply it to the rest of the building?
No, it makes perfect sense. And it's interesting you say that. We do have quite a few clients that are using management agreements. And we recently have developed a new analytics platform that's essentially a data warehouse. It's a really great way to see all your data. And many of these operators, they used to download a report once a month and send it to them. Now they can just provide them access to the back end. And those landlords, those people that aren't necessarily operating the space, they can get that bird's eye view of all of those things you were talking about, like the contract, the memberships, the revenue, so they don't need an Excel file once a month. And technology is completely changing that. You're right.
Yep, it is. But so one last thing that I'll bring up, because I know we're getting close.
Yeah, only got about 8 minutes left.
Organic growth. Let's talk about organic growth. To me, that's when a flex operator has done their job and with overwhelming success. When you have members in these spaces and they're growing, and then they want their own space. If you can't accommodate them in your space, the landlord can use them elsewhere, and you can have this organic growth. And what that organic growth does from a number standpoint, you don't have to worry about paying leasing commissions or tenant improvements or rent concessions. I mean, think about that just from a number side and a value creation side, being able to take that member that started off with 2 people, and after 2 years, they might have 10 to 20 people, and they need a larger space. I mean, the numbers are staggering, but I will say the challenge for the flex operators today, it's their corporate overhead. And that's been the true financial challenge, is to try to figure out how to do that part better. It's still, even from WeWork standpoint, that was their Achilles heel. The local smaller operators don't have that issue. But as you ramp up and expand, you need more people to service the company.
Yeah, the corporate side. No, that makes perfect sense. No, and your topic about organic growth is so accurate. I mean, I remember very well how that was just in my original space. That was pretty normal. A space would grow to 4 or 6. It would grow out of our size of offices and move to the floor below us. And what's great is those tenants can still share in all the amenities and the community of that co-working space. They just have to go up and down a floor. So it really is a real thing. In the last couple minutes, I want to ask one last question. A lot of these operators or landlords, have heard more about management agreements, say that they're interested and they want to get started today. What path should operators take to get started with a management agreement? Should they reach out to the landlord? Should they reach out to someone like you to help them through this process? Any insight on that would be helpful, I'm sure.
I think, I would say all of the above. I think it really depends on the market, on whether some operators might even know their landlord. Some operators, they might feel intimidated by the landlord. So that's where we come in. We can speak that language, but at the same time, it depends on who that landlord is, and making sure that you're speaking to the right individual within that company. Some landlords are really large, like Brookfield or Tishman Speyer or Hines. I mean, they've all gotten into the game. But one last thing I wanted to, I saw one other question before we go from Shane.
Shane's had a lot of good questions.
There's a lot of good questions. Shane, keep them coming. He asked for expenses like build out, especially for something as large as 20 to 40,000 square feet, under a management agreement. Who pays for that? The operator or the landlord? What do they do? Typically, even in a traditional lease, the landlord will pay that CapEx themselves. And I say that because most of those improvements are capital expenses, and they will stay with the building. Items like furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the FF&E, again, everything is negotiable, but at the same time, if the landlord is asking for skin in the game, the simplest way is for the operator to pay for the FF&E. And one thing you have to remember, the FF&E can be financed. So you're not putting up that capital expense. And if it's financed over 5 years, it runs within the pro forma of the operating business. So nobody's really coming out of pocket. It's being paid for through the revenues that are being generated by the business. And again, it's really about, how you set up, what happens to revenues, what they're paying for, what's the priority. And then at the end of the day, when you've paid for all these expenses, there's money left over. Who gets that? If the landlord gets it, that's fine. But at the same time, as an operator, you want to be rewarded for exceeding the budget, for exceeding expectations, for exceeding market rents. And that's really what's driving the boat here, is developing that relationship, but at the same time, that confidence and having that transparency throughout the process. That way the landlord can ask questions. What's your lead generation? What's your lead to member ratio?
Yeah.
How many are you getting? What's your source of your leads? And what's your pricing schedule? And you have to do all of this stuff up front. And at the end of the day, the landlord gets rewarded. And by the way, if it's the right landlord, that landlord will want to do business with you, not once, but more times, additional locations.
Yep. Well, Michael, thank you so much for those answers. Unfortunately, we're at the very, very top of the hour. Speaking of leads, though, I encourage you to join our next session at 1:00, entitled Future-Proof Demand Generation, Driving Growth in 2021 and Beyond. We have quite a few featured speakers, people from JLL and some industry heavy hitters. So highly recommend you check that out. But for all those questions we didn't get, we will record these and try to get back to you guys. As I mentioned as well, we'll have a recording of this online, and we will also get those slides out to you guys as well. So thank you so much for attending today. We really, really appreciate it. And we will see you guys in the other session room. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks.